Hello and welcome to the Forge's 12th episode of Ignite. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Hello again to any repeat listeners, and thank you to all the new people joining today. For any new listeners, this is a series of short webinars covering insights, marketing and strategy. Last week we heard from Lawrence Lamb of Nuance Tree. He gave us a quick trends presentation on two fascinating trends which are growing in China. You can find that on our social channels, which I'll post in the chat shortly. If you've any interest in China as a current or potential market, it's well worth checking that out. The title of this week's talk is What Corporations Can Actually Learn from Startups. On the call, we have two very special guests. We have Zsuzsa Ferencz and Gareth Hutchins, founders of children's toy and accessory brand Seahorsey. They will introduce themselves to you shortly. We also have Simon Garnett from The Forge, who will lead the interview. Just before we do that, some Zoom housekeeping, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with now. If anyone has any questions, post them in the chat, which Simon and I will monitor. If you want to remain anonymous, you can just send them to us privately. That's absolutely fine. We'll be recording the session and sending it out to any attendees and registrants in the following the talk. And it will also be going onto our social channels in the coming days. Anyway, that's all from me. Over to Simon.
Thanks, Adam. Brilliant. So we've got about 20 minutes for this very exciting, very interesting webinar. As Adam said, please do pop your questions in the chat. We love making these as informal and kind of fluid as possible. So if there are questions you have, things that are raised that you want to understand more, please do that. Before I go any further, Zsuzsa, Gareth, lovely for you to join us. I'll hand over to you. Perhaps just give us a little bit of your kind of background and introduction, and then we'll come on and talk about Seahorsey in a bit more detail.
Okay. So I'm Gareth. This is Zsuzsa.
Hi guys.
Hi. So we are with the co-founders of Seahorsey. We're also married, so we're with two little girls as a family. Our backgrounds before we founded Seahorsey and now as well are within marketing and communications. Collectively, we've got more than 30 years experience within the industries. I've worked at some of the big media agencies like Mindshare, Manning Gottlieb, and PhD. Started off in TV and now more latterly as a strategist. And I've also been a copywriter, writing for people like Saatchi and freelancing for the last few years.
And those who joined from Unilever to this webinar, I'm working for Unilever and I'm at the moment on maternity leave. I love insights, consumer insights, and I've been working in this role, discovering insights and supporting product and brand development for 12 years within Unilever. And our life has changed quite frankly, not just a little bit, last August, when our little daughter, 3-year-old daughter, gave us a spark for an idea that we always knew we might have inside because we were always eco-conscious people, but we really, it was a huge nudge, which I assume we will talk about in the next 20 minutes, right?
Indeed, brilliant. Well, thank you for that. And for everyone who kind of saw, one of the reasons we're doing this and why we're so keen to speak to Zsuzsa and Gareth is because so many businesses talk about embracing startup culture of doing that. But obviously, Zsuzsa, Gareth, you're not just been there, done that, but you are here and doing it right now, kind of live. So perhaps I could start by just give us a little bit. Zsuzsa, you mentioned that spark of inspiration from your daughter last year. Can you tell us a little bit about the background to Seahorsey and where you are with the business right now?
So sure. So basically, going back to that Eureka moment, it was, you don't need to go far away to get inspiration if you have kids, because frankly, I think they are source of inspiration. And what happened is that my 3-year-old daughter bumped into the famous Justin Hoffman photo, the swimming seahorsey with an earbud. And frankly, just as it shocked the world, it shocked her as well. And one question followed the other. and what was the Seahorsey is doing, what is that in the water. So basically that was the moment. We've been always kind of eco-conscious people, but never sort of eco-warriors whatsoever. We've been always trying to consume, shop in an environmentally friendly way, but never like in a crazy manner. But then in the moment when I was opening my mouth, comforting her, saying that, don't worry, our family is doing the best, I looked down and I saw the sea of plastic toys on the carpet of the nursery room and all around. And it really challenged me as a person who had a mindset of trying to take care of the environment. And that's when we thought, okay, we need to change our behavior and we need to do something to address this.
Yeah, we just had this idea to create. Initially, it was creating toys out of ocean plastic. We thought we want to do something that is going to help our children's future and could also potentially be a business that could help them financially in the short term. And it just we had this idea, this thought last October, and it just kind of didn't go away. So we ran with it. And so Zsuzsa's been on maternity leave, and so we've had a little baby, and so it's been challenging to fit everything in. But in between naps and late nights, we've been beavering away, kind of trying to develop this idea and to try and do something so that we could have basically a business that's going to have has a purpose and is going to hopefully contribute in some small way to a better world for our kids. Because we suddenly had this plastic anxiety when we became parents, and so that's where we are really. We've developed it, and maybe to be perfectly honest, we didn't call ourselves startups just after entering a competition, a startup competition. We really just wanted to sort of test the idea, whether it's, it has something in it or not. Basically creating eco-ethical toys and kids accessories out of ocean plastic and PET bottles, certified recycled material, which is Seahorsey is all about. And we were so thrilled to know that we were in the finalist of ideas out of 350 ideas, and then a couple of days ago we just had a pitch in front of investors, and they chose us to invest in to Seahorsey, and this is where we are at the moment. So to be absolutely frank with you guys, we didn't really call ourselves startups. We were just a family who wanted to do something to address plastic anxiety and leave a much happier and waste-free world for our kids.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, first of all, congratulations to get that investment. It's brilliant, and obviously a great endorsement that you're onto something really strong. There's lots in there that I want to talk about a little bit more. I'm really intrigued by this idea that you didn't call yourself a startup at the beginning. Why? What was the thinking? What did you think of as yourself, and what was the difference between, if you had given yourselves the label of a startup, what would that be in your head that was different?
I don't know. I don't think of us as startup. I think of us someone who has a mission, and we are small. We have to do everything. It's from a from a business perspective, our mindset is really different to let's say if I put my Unilever hat on, I can see the differences, right? So it's more about mindset. We don't call ourselves a startup, and I think that I love the definition of startup coming from Eric Ries, saying that startup is just a human institution who are trying to create a product or a service under extreme uncertainty. which I think is a perfect top-notch definition for a startup, especially during these last months. What's happening around the world, it's, I think, a bang-on definition. And personally, this is how I feel as well, because as a startup mindset, you know, I would never call myself an expert or think of myself as an expert of doing something, because you never know what you need to do tomorrow. Being startup is about, I think, and Gareth can challenge me on that, but it's about learning every single day, if not every hour. So that's for me one learning. And the other is that we've been through it, like a startup boot camp, if you may, that's how they call it, but basically like really gave us a good theoretical background as well to sharpen your financial planning and sharpen your idea that can be upscaled. And I think that there was a really good advice they gave us that I would have never had the guts to do before, is fake it until you make it. And basically that's what we had to do. Literally, we launched a brand with prototypes. So we are, I'm saying this, we have only prototypes, we are going to go into production, but we did not launch ourselves when we had, you know, an inventory of goods. And this is also for me very different to what I have been experiencing in bigger companies. You know, you need to, I think, put your balls on the table, but not be feeling, you know, expert of anything. And you know, you just need to go for it, even if you have a product that is not necessarily perfect. Because if you think about your consumer base, you have like this curve, and that you know that your inventor and your early adopter consumers will be happy about a sort of an almost perfect product. So you have every chance to get those, because they will be okay with it, because if they, you know, especially in this environmentally friendly trend and in the sustainable market, there are consumers who would rather choose a product that is not necessarily perfect, but it's sustainable. So that's the reason why we went for these. And you know, we had this thinking that as we go, we will develop based on, you know, the demand and people's the feedback we get from our customers. And by the time we get to the critical mass, we will have a good product, a really perfect product. But it was a great advice, fake it until you make it. Because you know, I would have never ever had the guts to do that.
We do have some products. We've got some. This is ready. But yeah.
This is made of 11 plastic bottles.
Fantastic. We love it. Very good. So really interested in that, because obviously, you know, there's a lot in the marketing press about, let's be honest, oftentimes glamorizing the startup industry, the startup world, and kind of people saying, you know, that's a really aspirational thing. It's, you know, something to really go after. And as I said, you know, if we at the Forge had £1 for every time we've heard a client say, you know, we're embracing startup culture, we're the world's biggest startup, you know, the best funded startup in the world, those kind of things. My guess is that in some of your previous roles before Seahorsey, you'd had some exposure to how startup culture was described, to what you thought it might be like. Tell us the reality versus that expectation or perceptions of what you thought it would be versus what you've actually experienced.
Well, I've been in a lot of the companies that I've been at previously. We've always had lots of refreshes, and we've had sometimes missions to embrace things like startup culture, but very little actually really changes. I think one of the big differences between actually having a startup, because we are, whether we call it or not a startup, we're a startup, is that it's very personal for us. So we've got an invested. One thing that a company can't actually have is they have resources. People have resources as an employer, but we are essentially ambassadors who are passionate about the brand and communicators. And it would be very difficult for a big company to change that, because it's a personal passion project for us. We do everything from start to finish. It's just, I think there's actually kind of implementing it at a company is easier said than done. You can have all these great ideas, but essentially, if you haven't got an invested interest in it at heart, it's very hard to change much. And also risks as well. So we are at the situation where we have to take risks to get anywhere. We've come from nowhere to a business on the verge of launching. We have to take risks, but when you're at a big company with lots of shareholders, you have your wings clipped a little bit, and it's easier said than done. And I also, sorry.
So I was going to say, that's really interesting. Do you think those are just realities that can ever be overcome, or do you think that there are things that big corporates can learn from that might enable more of that risk taking and kind of investment?
Yeah, I would say that you need to, if you want to replicate this kind of model, or why this is a startup can be successful and agile and all of these things, is because we are interested in what we are doing. We really passionate about it. So if you invest into your employees to be able to feel the same passion, and if you have a team that is really trying to go for it, I think there is already like a strong leg to replicate the startup mindset. But for me, this is such a fluffy word. So so this really it's almost like for us it's a family business, but it's just, we feel this is like our third child, and we try to do the best to thrive with this idea, because we really think that there is a need for it. We really think, and we really think that we are not only going to give joy to kids with the Seahorsey products, but we are also creating something bigger here, which is a more sustainable, waste-free world. And I'm sure, having worked with Unilever for a long time, that there are so many passionate people around me. So that's something that needs to be constantly fueled in a big company, so they feel the same sentiment as we, for example, do towards Seahorsey.
So I wonder if it'd be a way to give employees a more vested interest in a way, to come up with some way to make them have a more personal association with it. I know lots of employees of big brands feel passionately about their product and their job and what they're doing, but it's not quite the same. It's not quite the same as creating something from scratch. And Seahorsey, essentially, we started this to do good, to do something that had purpose. That was our number one mission. And from this, in a way, the secondary factor was monetary financial business. But we're not stupid. We know there is benefit to be had in sustainable brands. So, for example, eco market is driving the toy market, and sustainable brands are growing faster than non-sustainable brands. And younger audiences, especially like millennials and Gen Z, they expect brands to actually stand for something rather than just selling stuff or being something, doing such stuff. So we know there is a business reason behind that, but the first reason was brought on from us becoming parents and having this heightened sense of almost like panic and anxiety about what is going on and what can we do.
Yeah. And in most of the cases, startups are set up to grow and to sort of find the market product fit and upscale the idea when it's done, and then in 7-10 years time become like sold or there is in this startup world, this growth is extremely, is eccentric. I think characteristics of startup growth. This you need to upscale the idea, find the market product fit, and because of this, I almost feel that that startup has a definition, or as a stage of a company or of an institution, has its expiry date on, because you can't be startup forever, And we were also thinking, what if one day we will be prestigious global player in the sustainable eco-toy segment. Let's just play with the idea. We will need to obviously behave differently and set up much more structure and a team who support this. But we were just talking about this with Gareth the other day, that we really want to keep this family feel, and also this mindset that we are currently applying to everything we do around Seahorsey, because it is a temporary thing, isn't it? So I think it's very important also to recognize that this mindset might be inherited in a bigger company, but actually a startup is a temporary thing. It's just the beginning of something.
Yeah, but it goes back to that vested involvement in your idea, and I'm very conscious on time, because we're rapidly running out of time. But please, again, if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to pop them in. A couple of last things from me that I wanted to do. One of the things that I wanted to just touch on was, I remember in one of my roles, client side, when I worked before I became agency side, I remember one of my bosses at one point telling me, I did a lot of role in innovation, and they said to me, your job is not to sell. Your job is just to present the idea and let the business make a decision. And that always struck me as quite weird, because I always thought, well, innovation should excite, right? You shouldn't mislead people, but you should be selling because it's your idea. And if you're not excited and passionate about it, then how is the rest of the business going to get excited about it? And I was just interested, from your perspective, you talk about the fake it till you make it. And I'm just kind of intrigued around that idea of that personal fire, that personal kind of passion, and what you might take back if and when you do go back into kind of corporate worlds, what you might take in terms of that sense of real personal passion, and how you might be able to bring that back into that kind of those kind of roles.
I don't think I'll best answer that. So you see, I am still freelancing at the moment, so I'm doing other jobs around the sides, but depending on how fast Seahorsey grows, I'm still doing that. I don't know. I think what would I do differently? I'll tell you one of the things that I know is like, one of the things that I think is of benefit. I know, for example, in terms of agencies, in the media world, everything is very segmented, and that's a benefit in a way, because you can use resources in different ways. But one of the things that I think has been a really great experience in terms of Seahorsey is we have done everything from top to bottom. And so we have built the website, we've designed the product, we've done the communications, the copywriting, everything. I mean, one of the things that when I was when I've been working in media agencies, I got into the media game after creatives and media were together. And I always thought that was strange. And I understand why they did it. They had to build big buying houses and stuff. But I think I really do strongly feel that the more kind of hands-on and joined up you can be, and if you can, the more involved in all different segments of a job, that would certainly help in terms of creating a startup mentality. Yeah. So I think it's easier said than done. But if there's some way to literally be involved across everything, to a degree.
And I personally, I'm sure I will be more appreciative with my marketeer colleagues, because I know that they have loads of challenges on the way.
And she's a very difficult client as well. So when we're working together, so I was doing a lot of the building the website and cause I do like Photoshop and edit films and stuff. Nothing was ever right. Now I could see her as a client, she'd be a nightmare.
Oh, there you go. Well, if that's not the truth of being a husband and wife entrepreneurial team, there you go. The truth there. Very good. We are already over time, which is just testament to, I think, how fascinating this whole subject is, and the brilliant insight you've shared. And I'm sure we could keep going for a long time. But just one last question that's come in. Just obviously, I mean, how you've managed to do this whilst being full-time parents, not for one, but two and a newborn and on maternity. I'm genuinely amazed. I don't think I could do much more than breathe when I had two small children. But one of the kind of key questions is what has been some of the most challenging and also the most fun parts of the last kind of 6-9 months as you've been on this journey. So what's the most challenging? What's been the most fun?
Challenging.
How can you give us such a big question for as last?
I know.
The last 3 months have been a lot of fun, being imprisoned with children while trying to do this. I kind of feel if we can do what we've done in the last 3 months, we can accomplish anything. Obviously it's been great to work together. We've never I know I was saying how she's a nightmare client. You can't be done.
Thank you.
But it's also wonderful to do something together. And I think it's been a lot of fun just kind of creating it from conception. I mean, I love kind of creating things, and we have had total creative control, which is also nice. To actually have a vision and try and see it through to the end.
Yeah.
And I think that because we were under pressure, because we had only the nights for Seahorsey, we really need to make decision, whether it was the right decision or a suboptimal decision, but by the next morning we had to make the decision because we had to progress. We knew that that's our time, and so it was quite effective and well spent couple of months in the lockdown. And let's not forget that we are almost like a little family business, so we are not forcing our kids to work, or don't get the wrong impression, but
I've seen your Instagram feed. I know that
our daughters are our brand ambassadors and models for the next 4 years, whether they like it or not.
They are testing the products, and it's good because they are so interested. So in the topic of sustainability, of course, they have no bloody idea what sustainability is. Don't get me wrong, but if they will be the ones pointing out, Anya, mom, there is a rubbish on the street. What can we make out of it? So they are so in tune with this whole ethos of Seahorsey, and I believe that because due to this lockdown, we got much stronger as a family, and also for me, I also see that a lot of friends of mine are starting to reassessing their relationship with the environment. So I know it's devastating for the whole world, but hopefully there will be not a new norm, but a better one, not back to normal, but a new better world, because people are really thinking differently about how they have lived and trying to be better with the environment as well.
Our daughter saw a plastic bottle on the floor the other day and started shouting at it excitedly and saying, "Let's make a bag," which I thought was hilarious.
Love it. Well, brilliant. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Really brilliant, unbelievably inspiring story. If it can mean one less plastic bottle floating in the ocean like they are behind me, and one more beautiful seahorse, cuddly toy or rucksack, then that can only be a good thing. We wish you all the very best. Thank you so much for your time. Just to say, next Thursday, 3 p.m. London time again. It'll be me again, I'm afraid. You'll have my dulcet tones to listen to. And just a bit of a follow-on, actually, we're going to be spending about 15-20 minutes, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about just some of the reasons, some of the myths around why innovation is still proving so elusively hard for big organizations. I think it's something like 80% of all innovation ultimately fails. You know, there are just still so many times the businesses aren't getting innovation right. Why? What can we do about it? So please do join us next Thursday, 3 p.m. London time for that. In the meantime, thanks again, Zhu. Thanks again, Gareth. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us,
Thank you
guys.
everyone else for attending. Have a lovely day. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.